Hello everybody and welcome back to another CB Showtunes tutorial. Now today what we're going to be getting into is basically setting up a timer for this game object right here to basically make it to where we cannot control it until of course we have actually had the cinematic timer activate or finish up its animation. So right now I'm actually pressing forward and back, and if you see the cinematic controller right here, it does that. And then of course once it gets destroyed, we can move our character around. I know it doesn't seem very impressive right now, but you can apply this to pretty much anything that you make. And of course, as always, I'm going to be putting the description, the script inside the comment section below. So let's go and get started. Now the first thing that you're going to need for this actual script to work is an empty game object. You can call it whatever you want to call it. I call it cinematic controller. Now with this cinematic controller, it's basically just going to be there so we can destroy it later on, so we're not having this timer continually run. The next thing that you're going to need to do is have this cinematic timer um, control script, which of course is the script that we're going to be covering today. Okay, so inside the script, I'm basically going to be working with a vehicle inside this game. So I basically made a public game object called vehicle. Now you can call this whatever you want to call it. If it's a player, if it's whatever, you could just add as many of these as possible. Since I'm only going to be enabling one game object or disabling one game object and all, I just need to put one game object. But if you need to, just simply type in multiple game objects as well. Okay, so the second thing that we're going to be having is a public float called set cinematic time. This right here basically is going to set the first value for our time. The more animations that you have for that specific cutscene or pretty much for how long the animation time is, if you have multiple setups for this, like say for instance you have a scene 1 and scene 2 as I'll cover below, then you may need to of course have multiple ones of these timers set up. And of course, I have this serialized field so I could see this private float inside the inspector. And we call this float timer. So this timer is actually what's going to be controlling everything inside the script. So this sets up the timer, but timer actually, we're going to be having this subtract constantly. Okay, now we're going to create private animators called scene 1 and scene 2. You can also set this as private animation, but I would go with animator because they're easier to use and you can always have them just set up whenever you want to use them. Okay, so underneath the void start function, we're going to say timer is equal to set cinematic time. This pretty much just says that in the beginning of the game, our current timer is going to be equal to whatever you set your set cinematic timer. Of course, with our vehicle, we're going to be getting our component, our move script, and then we're going to make it enabled is equal to false. If you want to completely disable your character and all, say for instance you have a player, so you'd simply type in your player dot, not player perhaps, you say player dot get component, and then of course you're going to put in your player script. I think my player script was actually called movement. So anyway, you're going to put in your player script, and of course you're just going to put enable is equal to false. You could also just completely disable the player as well. That's up to you if you want to do that. But for me, I just need to disable the movement for my vehicle and all, so that's just what I did. And of course, we're going to have this public bool. I didn't actually cover that. I think I actually skipped that just a second ago. But anyway, you're going to have these public bools, and these public bools will decide which scene we're running. So scene 1 is going to be, of course, the first scene we're going to be running. Scene 2 is going to be the second scene we're going to be running. You may be confused when I'm saying scene. Scene is just a reference to the animation that we're going to be running. It's not actually changing scenes from, say for instance your game to your menu or whatever. This is actually just for animation purposes. Okay, so starting off, we're going to say scene 1 is equal to true, and scene 2 is equal to false. Okay, underneath the void update function, we're going to say if timer is greater than or equal to 0, then timer minus is equal to 0.01f. So as long as our timer is going to be greater than this current value right here, then we're going to constantly be subtracting. Next, we're going to put if timer is less than or equal to 0. So once it basically goes under the value that we have set, then we're going to say if scene 1, so basically if our current first animation is running or is true, then we basically have this right here. I put it in a little comment section so you can put your animation script there. But basically you're going to say start animation for animation 1 here. So we're going to look at our cube. So wherever our cube is, right there. So basically with our animation on our cube, now I don't have any animation on my cube and all, but basically you're going to have your animation move around, right? So you'd have to create your animation and of course just put it wherever you want to put it. Then you're going to go over to your animator controller. I think I have another game object inside here that, okay. So let's take a look at this little animation right here. So with this animation, it basically has certain set values. Now for this particular function to work, what we're going to do is we're basically going to go over to the AnyState function and you're going to simply right click on it, make transaction or transition, set it to the animation that you want. There should only be one animation or two animations depending on how many scenes you have for that one game object. And of course you're going to add a condition. Now if you don't have any condition for this, you just need to come over here to the parameters, press plus, and you can add any one of these from bools or triggers. We just want it to be referenced to what we're running. And for this, I think you just need a trigger. And you're just going to say scene 1. And of course, you could do the same thing by setting up scene 2. Add it right there. Go over to scene 1. And then from there, you're just going to go over to your animation. So basically, we're going to find scene 1. And scene 1, basically, we're going to say dot set trigger. And then we're going to simply call the trigger, so scene 1. And just like that, you just called the animation for your scene. Now keep in mind though, that since we do have multiple animators inside here, then it's making reference to multiple game objects inside the animation right here. Or, actually you only need one of those. I'm going to actually subtract that. So basically, our scene 1 is the only thing you need. I was goofing off earlier. So yeah, you're basically going to take your scene 1 and you're going to, oh, there we go. Yeah, you're basically going to take your scene 1 and you're going to play your animation based on whichever it is. So you're going to call that trigger and put it right there. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, let me go and get rid of that because it doesn't belong. And let's go ahead and get rid of that. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to discuss this right here. So change time for how long animation 2 is. So after you play your animation, you want to be able to set the timer for your second animation. Now keep in mind your first animation should be as long as this timer set cinematic time is. So whenever your second animation plays, you want to be able to change how long that timer is. So all you need to do is just change that value. If you need to. If you don't need to, great. It just makes it easier if you have to adjust it. And of course, lastly, we're going to say change to animation action 2. So scene 1 is equal to false and scene 2 is equal to true. So now, since scene 2 is equal to true and scene 1 is equal to false, this timer is going to skip this timer right here, and then it's going to go over to this one right here. And this is an exact identical copy of this one right here, but since this is our last animation, we're not going to have change time inside this one. We're just going to have the start animation and then end all animation stages. Now, if you have any more animation stages, just keep adding more and more of these until you have finally got all of those done. And of course, lastly, you're going to say else. You're going to grab the vehicle, the example move, re-enable it, make it true, and then destroy this game object. Now keep in mind you can have multiple game objects, you could have multiple animations or animators, and you can continually add more bulls or timers if you need to. So yeah, I hope you guys liked this tutorial. If you liked it, please like, subscribe, check out some other videos, and I'll see you guys next time.